Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. I'm getting an update from Snowline Gold, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol SGD and on the OTCQB under the symbol SNWGF. I am chatting again with the CEO, Scott Berdahl. Now, Snowline Gold has been quite busy since the last time I chatted with Scott back in about the middle of December. We've had a number of drill results at the Rouge project focused on the Valley Zone. January 27th was the last set of results from the Valley Zone, as well as a new target that was just released. The news on that from yesterday. Scott, let's start with a quick summary of the drill results from the Valley Zone. Take us through some of the noteworthy drilling and, even better, provide a summary of what you learned from last year's large drill program at Valley.
Sure, that sounds great. And yeah, it's been a while since we've chatted, and yeah, we've had quite a few big holes come out in that time. Just looking back at our site here, I see the 3rd, the 15th, the 22nd batches of results from Valley on each of those dates, and generally, we're seeing, I think part of the story there, you can just see in the headlines that we're just consistently hitting big runs of mineralization. Actually, all three of those, I see a headline number of at least 300 meters grading at least 2 grams per ton. I think that's all from surface too. So, it just, where we drill at Valley, we're just seeing a very robust and continuous body mineralization come together. And so, that's obviously very exciting. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from the drilling of 2023. From 2022, we had done some really big step outs and really kind of looked more broadly at this valley intrusion, and to the point where a lot of our drilling was, way off target in the sense that, okay, we'd found this mineralization here, let's step way out, see how far out does it go, and, step too far out and drill some stuff that we now know is not mineralized. But now in kind of reassessing and coming back to okay, well, we know there's a lot of mineralization here and there's a lot of area to play with, and coming and drilling that in more detail, we've really seen, the holes in 2022 were good and in this zone and quite continuous, but is a bit of an inference to say, okay, well, this is continuous and this is really continuous over here, so can we infer that it's continuous in between them? And with this drilling, we're seeing that, yeah, we very much can. And so really a really well-behaved gold system is coming together at Valley and the other thing is that there was infill and step outs from the mineralized hole in 2023's drilling. And we're seeing, okay, we had, good grades in this hole and good grades in this hole, and we drill in between and we're seeing better grades. So, we're still kind of finding the hottest part of the system, but what we have found and what is really taking shape is a really robust, like 2 gram to even big zones of 5 and even 6 grams per ton near surface, basically at surface, and again, just as continuous. And so really just that grade distribution of having those high grades near surface makes for a very attractive discovery in our minds that when you look at, if you're looking at what a mine will be and what kind of cash flow it could have, a lot of mines, you need to do a lot of work before you really get to that prize and start really making the money. Here, this looks very much to be like something that, day one, for several years, you're just going to be digging into high grade material. And so it's a very front heavy cash flow structure potentially. And so that has us really excited. We still have more work to do in terms of delineating that high grade zone, both internally and figuring out the boundaries. There's a lot of open things on the northeastern edge of it. Yeah, so we'll be chasing that going into the upcoming field season as well.
All right, a couple things that stood out to me, at least from that last January 22nd news release. I'll post figure 1 below this interview. Let's look at hole 70. We can see the direction of, it seems like, all the past drilling, but then hole 70 goes right across those, right in the middle of the project, right in the middle of all these drill holes, is drilled on a totally different direction. What were you trying to show with hole 70?
Well, a couple of things, but yeah, we've drilled all of our holes basically cross-cutting the grain of this stuff. So the mineralization is these vertically or near vertical sheeted veins, just thousands and thousands of quartz veins, as we've talked about before, cutting through this granodiorite. And yeah, you can picture them in that figure 1. They're all basically parallel to the actual figure. Like if you were to just put a piece of paper in front of your screen there, that is the orientation of the veins. And so naturally we've drilled to cross cut those. That's generally how you want to drill a target. But to drill down along them, we wanted to see if there are any quirks that we should know about in terms of, like, does it matter what direction you drill this material at that is going to affect your grade? And this really kind of gives more confidence in terms of, and what we found with that hole is no, it doesn't really matter. As you might expect, we're kind of, instead of drilling kind of across the corrugations in a sheet of corrugated cardboard, we're now drilling down along them with that hole. And so, the veins are closer to parallel to the hole. So even with a given density of veins, you're going to have a little bit higher variance where, you're in one vein for longer and then you're out of one vein for longer. But when you average it out over the intervals, and actually even averaging out at the sample size at the scale of our, 1 to 1.5 meter samples, it's still pretty much the same. So you do see a little bit more variance in that hole, but you see the same grades and you see the great continuity. And then the other thing it demonstrates is just continuity between the sections, the fences that we've been drilling across this thing. Instead of, okay, we're making tighter fences and now we see the grade is still, we're still getting good mineralization. Therefore, we can infer even more directly that it's continuous between these sections. Now, we have a hole that just outright goes and connects sections, and you just see the mineralization the whole way through. So that's exciting to see. And then just a nice kind of tertiary effect from that hole is that it ended in fairly strong mineralization down at depth, down in the southeastern part of the hole, where we weren't necessarily expecting grade to continue like that. So just another kind of open part of the system at depth that we have more work to do in probing around.
So in terms of this valley target, when you get back on the ground and follow up with more drilling this year, where is this zone open? Where do you think it's closed off?
It's closed off along the western side where the intrusion comes to an end there, and you have the hornfells, and you see that somewhat on the northwest. Although the northwest, we still have some things to figure out as to where that boundary exactly is. And down to the southeast, at least near surface, you can see in holes. Actually, in that figure one, you can see holes like 43 and 19, where the grades are definitely dropping off, but just the geometry of that drop off still holds a pretty significant potential delta in terms of if it's all zero or if there's a gradient there. And so I think that it would help us to better understand that. But I think the most pressing is looking at how things are behaving in the north and the northeast, and both dipping down to depth towards the northeast, but also open near surface. Yeah, so that'll be a key focus of this year's program. And then opportunistically, where we can, we are seeing things like in hole 70 and like in hole 39 and others, where we're seeing good mineralization at depth at various points in the deposit. So at this point, we get more bang for our buck by finding mineralization that's right near surface. But nonetheless, if there's a big system at depth or big zones at depth that we can add to the picture, then we're all for finding them. And so, like I say, opportunistically, we'll be letting holes run when they're in mineralization. And if we get to a hole that it makes sense to continue to test potential continuation of mineralization seen at depth in another hole, then we'll likely do that as well.
Okay. Where in terms of future results? I know there's still some drill core in the lab. Where was that drilled? When could we expect that?
The drill core we have at the lab is just our metallurgical hole. That was drilled at Valley, right at the pretty similar orientation and location to hole 66, basically a twin of that hole, and slightly different dip, but nonetheless. But that's basically, we've drilled a larger diameter core there, just to have more material to play with as we go into more advanced tests, more quantitative tests for metallurgical testing and for rock property testing, getting things dialed in, like, okay, what energy do you need to put in to process this stuff, in addition to, finding out what the optimum grind sizes are for different processes, and finding out what the optimal process flows are for different things. So this will give us a lot of really good quantitative information in terms of how to actually approach this thing, and ultimately what the economics of extracting ore from this, and not just the economics, but the logistics would be, or extracting gold from this mineralization would be.
All right, let's talk about the new management team addition. Brian Hegarty as Vice President of Sustainability and External Relations. What's Brian's roles here? What is he in charge of?
Well, basically, at this point, he's in charge of the things that have to do with Valley that are not exploration, and that's a pretty huge basket at this point, but he's the first in a new arm of the company, effectively, that is really focused on advancement of Valley. We have a bird in hand there, a very unique type of bird in hand, and a special one. We'd be remiss in not paying attention to that, and really we want to accelerate anything we can accelerate. We have been doing things like water quality monitoring there for and hydrology measurements for almost a year and a half now. Things like that, getting baseline environmental surveys into place, and really just setting up all the pieces we need to set up to start looking towards environmental assessment and feasibility studies and that sort of a thing. So that's a big part of his role. And then, of course, since the launch of the company, we've always taken very seriously and held in high regard our relationships with affected First Nations. And Brian has a lot of great connections in the Yukon, a long history of working here, and he's been instrumental already in helping to continue those conversations, to advance those conversations, and that sort of a thing. And so having someone dedicated to that role will help to ensure that we're keeping those lines of communications open and strengthen our relationship with the Natchanaik Dun, with the Ross River, and with any other groups potentially affected.
All right, final news release that we should get to is the one just from yesterday, February 20th. A new gold target that the company has found on the Rouge project. Take us through what work went into finding this target.
So a lot of work has gone in there. That one has been on the map, both literally and figuratively, as an interesting area for quite some time, but because it's been a magnetic anomaly with some interesting regional stream geochemistry coming off it. But this year we really hit it hard with some more systematic geochemical sampling, the soil and talus fine samples that you see there, grid and contour program, and then following up with prospecting work and some geological mapping and rock sampling and that sort of a thing. And so it was great to see that target come together, just seeing that the footprint of the anomalism there, as well as not just having the footprint and having these soil and talus fine samples, but having actual outcrops that you can take a chip sample across it and get these fairly consistent grades over some pretty respectable intervals just starting out. So we had actually, when Valley started out, we had a soil anomaly there. We had a chip sample taken from the previous operator that we'd optioned it out to prior to being Snowline, when we were just a private company, and they had chipped about 4 meters at 4 point something grams per ton. So in the vicinity, in what ultimately turned out to be the Hornfells, right next to the intrusion at Valley. And so to have these kind of chip samples coming out and to have that kind of a geochemical signature is pretty exciting at this point.
All right. Look, Scott, we've covered a lot here. Thank you for taking us through the last number of news releases. I'll post a link to the Snowline Gold website and the news section so you all can read over all that recent news. And please keep sending me any questions you have for Scott. Scott, thank you again for your time. I'll follow up on the back of some more news.
Perfect. Okay, thanks, Cory. I really appreciate the time.